Hey everyone, we're here. We're here, we're live. I'm here with the super lovely and talented Anna. So Anna, thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much for having me. This is awesome. Great way to start today.
Isn't it? I can see a few people who are like perhaps trying to work, but then getting a little bit distracted by all the live fun happening today. But we were just looking, honestly, it's so humbling. We were chatting in the green room before we went live, and we could just see how many hundreds of people have showed up for this today. I think it's absolutely incredible. So thank you guys.
Yeah, it's really cool for you guys to spend your time with us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I can see a little hey from South Carolina from Joe. Do you guys want to leave a quick comment with where you are watching us from? Because I guarantee we've got people all over the world. And as Anne said, Anna is worth it.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, I see some from Russia, Cyprus, I saw all over the place.
Oh, well, look at this. Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Tampa, Netherlands, Germany. Oh, we can't keep up, guys. So many comments. South Africa, Pennsylvania, Alabama. By the way, Anna, because so many people have shown up, there will be like a slight delay in the comments.
Yeah, okay.
So I always say to guests and people we hang with on these things, if you make a hilarious joke and then it's like crickets, give it 5 seconds and then you start seeing the response come in.
Yeah, I don't make hilarious jokes. My jokes are terrible. My art is good, but my jokes are terrible.
Well, that makes 2 of us. I'm known for the dad jokes around our office. So
yeah, stick to what I know.
Yeah, don't quit the day job, right?
Yeah, no, right? Yeah.
Debbie says, hope DC does more of these. We do. We've got another one tomorrow with a very talented Tanji Baxter. But in general, we love these things. And so we're definitely going to do more. Julie Mead, who just provided a really, really helpful live class, she's going to be back on some of our weekly hangouts. Anna, we'd love to have you back in future as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to come join you guys. This is fun.
Absolutely. So thanks again for everyone showing up. We can see even like as we're talking, more people are joining every few minutes here. So Anna, what are you going to be sharing with the lovely people today?
I am going to be sharing a class that I've put together that's going to show you 8 different ways that you can essentially artsify your digital scrapbooking or even scrapbooking in general. I tend to blur the boundaries between digital artistry and scrapbooking. And so these are 8 ways using 8 different techniques and then also featuring some of the key products that I create for digital artists and digital scrapbookers like yourselves. So that's kind of my goal today.
And
we're going to create the layout. We're going to create a whole project throughout this hour. So
love it. And I mean, you didn't think 1 or 2 was enough. You're like, I'm going to bring 8 to the table to really blow people away.
Yeah, let's just make it count. You know, why do it at all otherwise?
I can see a couple of people. I think the majority it's working for, but of course, there's always a few little technical issues. So if you are struggling with audio or video, we recommend look for the live clock in the bottom left. So it will say live and it's like 4.5 minutes. And it says get audio video help. If you click on that, there are some compatibility options, and that seemed to work for everyone on the last live class. So if people are struggling in the comments, could you guys maybe let them know to do that, just in case they didn't hear me give those instructions, and we'll help each other out. But I'm sure we will get 100% of people here working perfectly. So little disclaimer there on the technical front, but as I say, I think it's working great for people. So Anna, I believe you're going to share your screen and jump in.
I can go ahead and do that.
I'm excited. I feel like in fact, I have a notepad here at the ready. So here we go.
All right, let's get going then.
Cool, let's do it.
Okay, so this is the project. So first of all, welcome to Artsify Your Scrapbooking. I'm going to kind of lead you through a journey of 60 minutes in how to blur the boundaries between traditional scrapbooking, linear design, and then photo artistry, where the photos and the elements on your page are going to sort of blend into the background. And my style, this certainly has a mixed media abstract art approach to it. So just a few things to get started. When I talk about digital art, I'm essentially referring to digital scrapbooking designs or photo artistry designs. And then when I refer to elements, that's basically any digital asset, and this is a word I just picked up recently, found in the Anna Aspnes design store. So 8 different ways to create a layout. We're going to be recreating this project that I have on my screen here. And if you look at the layers panel, you can see that I've grouped some of these into sort of a group. So if I open up these, you'll see all of the different layers in between. But essentially, I have sort of a 3-step process in which you create an artsy foundation, and then you add in the photo into the mix in a blended format, and then we embellish with the different elements in order to have a little bit of fun with the artistry. And we are going to be using a selection of supplies. I apologize for these black areas. Unfortunately, it's something to do with Windows 10, and it's a glitch. No. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It doesn't, everybody has it. I just had a customer contact me, and she's just upgraded her computer, and she has the same issue. So it may go away, it may not, but just kind of move past it. But we're going to be working with this art play palette. I've put together a custom brush set, which combines a number of my brushes. We're going to be working with artsy transfers, FotoBlendz clipping masks, WordArt, some multimedia elements, which are essentially clustered elements, and then warm glows. And then we're going to be working with this photo here. So the first way to artsify your scrapbooking is really a foundational piece, and that's to select the colors appropriately to match your photo. So essentially, when you have a photo, you want to identify what the prominent colors are, what the neutral colors are, and what the bold colors are. And in this case, we've got a prominent amount of green and blue with neutral accents. But my advice to you when creating a project is to go with a neutral background and then use the colors in your photo to accent those neutral colors. That way, the focus of the design remains on the photo, and you don't get too distracted into the minutiae of the background, which is really just the foundation to elevate your images. So that's the first way to artsify your scrapbooking. And I went ahead and I selected this art play palette Scenic. Now, art play palettes are essentially a digital scrapbooking kit, or a collection, which contain a brush set. So, and these images are delivered in PNG and ABR format. And then we have elements, and there are 2 different types of elements. I include elements in folders, which are delivered in PSD and PNG format. And they are essentially allow you to manipulate the shadow independently from the element. Now, why do I add shadows to some elements and not others? Usually it's a cast shadow, so it's not an even shadow on the element. These elements here are delivered in PNG format, and you can easily add a layer style drop shadow to those, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you. And then we have the papery, which of course is our foundation. And in our foundation, I usually have at least 4 artsy papers. In this one, there are 5. And so what you want to do is you want to closely match the colors of your photo with the artsy paper. And I am going to, this leads us to the second way to artsify your scrapbooking. I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can create an artsy foundation for your design. So you can go ahead and just use one of these artsy papers. These are pre-designed for you to simply blend your photos into the background. There are also 2 other different ways that you can create your own custom designs. So I am going to go ahead and go back into Photoshop and first of all show you one way that you can introduce these designs into your Photoshop or Photoshop Elements workspace. So you're going to go to File, Open, And then you're going to navigate to your digital art supplies, and you're going to access your ArtPlay palette. And we're going to head into the papery folder. And I want to introduce an artsy paper and a solid paper so that I can show you the different ways that we can create this artsy foundation. So to do this, I'm going to click down on the first paper that I want to introduce. I'm going to hold down the Control on a PC or the Command key on a Mac and click on a solid paper. And you can see now that I've been able to select both of those papers. And you can go ahead and double click on those images, or you can click open. And then these images are going to open into your workspace. And then with the Move tool selected from the Tools panel, you're going to click, hold down the left mouse button, drag, and then release. And you can see how we are able to move that onto our canvas. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this layout, and I'm going to create a new layout to get started. So we're going to go to File, New. And I like to work in 12 by 12 inch format. And this is the size of these artsy papers. You can, of course, work in any size format you choose, such as 8 by 10, 6 by 6, 8 by 8, for example. So you want to select the measurement, and then you want to go in and select a width. So I'm going to enter a width of 12, a height of 12. You want to make sure that your resolution is at 300 pixels per inch. This is going to ensure that you have a good quality print when you upload it. So if you want to create something that you're going to print out and put into an album or a book, then 300 pixels per inch is ideal. You won't get that fuzziness in the prints, and you'll get a good quality print when you actually go ahead and do that. The color mode you want to set to RGB color, and then of course you want to have 8-bit as your selection. When you've got those values entered, you can go ahead and click OK. And now we have this new layout. And you can see that I'm moving these images around my window, and you can dock them by sort of bringing them into one another. So you see that blue line as I drag this over. This allows me to dock those images. So you're going to see them kind of snapping together. So I'm going to move my artsy paper onto my background. And so here we have a pretty much an instantaneous foundation to blend our photo. But you might want to create your own. So to do this, we're going to close out the original as we add these, and we're going to add this solid background. And there are two different ways you can create this custom artsy paper. You can use the transfers and overlays from the ArtPlay palette. So now if I head back to my ArtPlay palette Scenic and go into the transfers and overlays folder, you're going to see at least 12 different elements. And if I just kind of drag this over, you'll be able to see them. And these range from art strokes to paint splatters to painted pieces with texture and color, and they essentially have blended edges with varying amounts of transparency. And these images are delivered in PNG format. So that means they're a single layer element with a transparent background that you can essentially drag and drop onto that solid paper to create the design of your choice. So for example, let's go ahead and select some of these elements. And instead of opening these from within Photoshop, I'm going to select them and drag them in from my Windows folder. So again, I'm going to hold down that Control or Command key, and I'm going to click on the transfers that I want to open into my workspace. So I've got 3 there, and I'm going to drag them into my workspace, and I'm going to hover them directly over the top of that background. And what this does is it places those elements directly onto the canvas so that I don't have to drag them over using the Move tool. Now you can see that we've got this bounding box around the element, and in Photoshop you're going to click on the check mark at the top of your screen. If you're working in Photoshop Elements, that check mark is going to be located on the bounding box. So go ahead, when you click on that, you can see that the next one will be introduced. So we can click it again and then again. And so now you can see in our layers panel here, if I go ahead and just close this out, we have those 3 layers on top of our solid paper. And then with the Move tool selected from the Tools panel, you want to ensure that you have the Auto Select option turned off. This will allow you then to select those layers in the Layers panel and then move those around. If you want to use the Auto Select button, this allows you to click on that layer on the layout, and it will automatically select that layer in the Layers panel. Sometimes this can become problematic when you are working with multiple layers, because sometimes you're going to click on one element and it's going to accidentally click on a different element. So it's up to you. You're going to have to assess each time whether you want to use that auto select option or not. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off because of the layers of transparency in these elements. The risk to pick up the wrong layer is too great. So I'm just going to work with the layers in the Layers panel. And then from here, it's just a matter of moving them around the canvas to create my own artsy backgrounds. You can see it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, and you can move the layers up and down the Layers panel to find the best fit for your photo. So you can see how we've been able to create this artsy background using just 3 transfers and overlays. The second way to create a custom artsy background is to use that same background. You could go ahead and pick a new one if you wanted to, but we're going to this time use the artsy transfers, Sonoma. Now, usually I will create artsy transfers that will coordinate with each art play palette. However, you don't necessarily have to use the same artsy transfers together. You can mix and match to create variety. Again, going back to your photo and your color selection, as long as the colors coordinate, then you shouldn't have any issues mixing and matching your digital art supplies. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these, and you can see that there are 2 different folders here. And if I click on these elements, you'll see a preview of the artsy transfer, and then you'll also find a PSD file. And this is where the artsy transfers differ from the transfers and overlays. Transfers and overlays are delivered in a single layer PNG format. If I go ahead and drag this file into the background of my workspace, you want to make sure that you drag it into the background. If you try to drag a PSD file onto your canvas, it's going to convert into a single layer PNG file. And that's going to defeat the opportunity of using these artsy transfers because they are multi-layer files. So if I go ahead and open this up into my workspace, and we now go over to the Layers panel, you can see now that this transfer is made up of all of these different layers. And this means that essentially we can turn off or on the visibility of those layers by clicking on the eye icon next to each layer. You can go in and you can change the color of those layers by going to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. In Photoshop Elements, that's Enhance, Adjust Color, Hue and Saturation. So notice now how I'm able to change the color of that transfer if I want to, independently from the rest of the layers in the transfer.
I love that transfer, by the way, Anna.
Oh, thank you.
It's really, I feel like I can reach out and grab it. You know, it looks so 3D almost, and really like that mixed media approach, which I've always loved.
I really love texture. Texture is one of my big ways to instill visual interest into any of my designs, really. Yeah, you can also go ahead and you can resize these transfers. With the Move tool selected and the Show Transform Controls option checked in Photoshop, if you're working in Photoshop Elements, these options are going to be based at the bottom of your screen, and you're going to want to make sure you have the bounding box option checked. If I hover my cursor over the corner of that bounding box, notice how it kind of converts into a diagonal double-ended arrow. And this means that I am now able to resize that layer. So if I click down, with that left mouse button drag, then I can resize these layers independently of one another. And then I can also drag that cursor out to get this arced double-ended arrow. And then this also allows me to rotate. You can also add masks to these layers and manipulate with brushes if you want to. But that's a topic for a different day.
I've just seen a comment, loads of positivity in the comments, by the way.
Oh, good. Awesome.
Kirsten says, this is awesome. And Janice says, Anna is fantastic at explaining all of this, which I completely agree. And I'm glad I got my notepad. I hope you guys have yours, because there's a lot here. You know, Anna's really packing a lot into a relatively short session. So watch the replay for sure, because you might miss a couple of bits, but take as many notes as you can. And I think as well, Russ mentioned, unfortunately, I don't see the Scenic Art Play palette on the DC store. Is that something where I guess we can hopefully add it in
yeah,
future?
We can go ahead and add it. I was, yeah, you know what happened with that, but yeah, we can go ahead and add that into the mix. I can get that to you later today. And I can get you all the supplies in this particular class.
Appreciate it. But you guys, Anna's got so much stuff in her store. We will get to that later, but I adore your stuff, Anna. I just think it's so different, to be honest, but so beautiful. And I love like that multi-layered effect that you seem to be so good at creating.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. I basically do what I love, and I'm grateful that people love it too. So I'm here just to kind of show people how to do it.
Awesome. So what step are we on out of interest?
So we're still on step 2. This is a kind of a lengthy step, but we're getting close to step 2. So the artsy transfer, in order to move this onto our canvas, we of course have to select all of the layers in the layers panel. So you're going to click either on the first or the last layer. It doesn't really matter. Hold down that shift button on your keyboard to select all those layers. And then with that move tool selected, and you want to make sure you have that auto select option off, because again, this is one of those situations that if you have that selected, then when you click down to drag this transfer onto your solid background, you could potentially click and unselect all of these layers and accidentally just select one. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag that onto our canvas. And so now you can see how we're able to create a foundation using these different pieces, and you can then sort of move these pieces around independently from one another. That's kind of like
that's a mouthful.
Yeah, I know, right? So you can do that. And then you can reselect the auto select option. And so you can move these pieces around independently. You can also bring in the transfers and overlays from the Art Play palette and perhaps incorporate those into the mix too. So you can see how just by dragging and dropping these pieces onto your canvas, you're able to create something pretty effective and a great foundation for your photos. So
sorry, just a quick one for people. I think, again, for the majority, it's fine. But if you are getting a bit of a blurry screen, it may well be because of your internet connection. It also may be just the connection from our side. It looks completely fine to me, and I think many others. But if you click on Get Audio Video Help, which is down the bottom left of the video, just below the live timer, then you should be able to choose compatibility options. And that fixes it for virtually everyone. So I think it's working for 95% of us, but for the few people out there having issues, that should do the trick.
Perfect.
Sorry, take it away, Anna. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't blurry for anyone at all.
So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just group these layers because I actually want to just use the transfers and overlays in this case. We could go ahead and use this. I mean, there are so many different options. So I'm going to go to layer and I'm going to group layers, and I'm just going to turn off that group of layers and then just move my foundation back into place. So this is the foundation I'm going to go with. And so now we're going to introduce a blended photo. And there are a number of different ways you can blend photos using layer masks and brushes. But I have a series of clipping masks, which I refer to as FotoBlendz. And these are essentially, if I go ahead and navigate to them, these are delivered. Sometimes they're delivered in PNG format. These days, I try and deliver them in PSD format. So essentially, you will get this multi-layer file. I'm going to drag this into my workspace so that you can see it. This is the issue. So you got to make sure you drag it actually over into your Photoshop. So you can see here that you actually have the FotoBlendz here, and then you have the elements sort of the thematic elements. There's a piece of lace and a leaf and some texture here. So this allows you to recolor those. You can resize them. You can remove them in the same way that you use the Artsy transfers. Or you can use all of these elements together, which is exactly what I'm going to do. And so
and Anna, I'm sorry to interject for a sec. With any of your art play packs, obviously this is one specific one, but they all work in quite a similar way, right? So they have different styles, but they come with these various PNG elements and textures and let you layer things up. So even if people don't own this specific one and they maybe grab a different one, they'll be able to use these techniques, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. All of the pieces are just different colors and different shapes, but you can use them in the same way. So you can take any art play palette, use these techniques to create three different ways to create your foundations. And then you can take any of the FotoBlendz. And like I said, I have large size FotoBlendz. There are smaller sized ones. Some of them are delivered in ABR format so that they can be used with the paintbrush tool. Sometimes they're just in PNG format. So just a variety that you can use. And I'm going to be using the PNG format in this case because I find that it's the quickest and easiest to demonstrate. So if I drag in the PNG file, of course, because it's a PNG, I can drag it directly onto my canvas, and that one's kind of popped up. So I'm going to just place it over the top here. So notice how I'm placing it over the most interesting area of my design. That's going to be the focal point of my layout design. So you can see that these are shapes, and the darker the black, the more opaque the mask. So this is where you're going to be able to see full transparency, full opaqueness. So if I clip something to here, as it gets more gray, it becomes more transparent. So the idea of these elements is that when I clip a photo to the mask or the shape, then the photo will conform to that underlying layer. So let me go ahead and access that photo that we were looking at earlier. I'm going to drag that into my workspace, and I'm going to drag it directly on top of my FotoBlendz. And I'm going to click on the check mark to accept that transformation. And you want to make sure that your photo completely covers the mask. And so I'm going to show you why. So your photo is on top of the clipping mask, and then you're going to go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And so notice how quickly and easily you're able to snap that photo down to that mask. Now notice when I don't completely cover the mask with the photo, we get this hard edge. So this may be where you have to slightly increase the size of the photo in order to fully extend over the edges of that mask. So in the layers panel, we have the clipping layer, we have the clipping mask, and together this is known as a clipping set. Notice when I clip the photo to that mask, we have this small arrow that indicates that indentation and action.
And so, guys, for the people that just watched Julie Mead's webinar and live class before this one, she also demonstrated some aspects of clipping masks, and we talked about how important it is because it's non-destructive.
Correct. It's non-destructive, and it gives you the opportunity to move your photo over the mask. You can go ahead and you can rotate, you can resize. The other interesting thing about clipping masks is you don't actually always have to clip your photo to the mask. Think back to the Artsy transfers and to the transfers and overlays. You can also clip your photos to any of those layers as well and use them as clipping masks. So that's another kind of little tip there.
Oh, sorry, I'm back, Anna.
Yeah.
I cut out for a second. All the technical hitches today, but yeah, where are we up to? Are we looking at clipping mask still?
We are moving on to the fourth way to artsify your scrapbooking, and this is to add blending modes into the mix. So I want to talk here about adding blending modes to your clipping set in order to enhance your artistry. So there's a couple of ways that you can work with clipping masks. If you want to apply a clipping mask to the clipping set, it's best to apply it to the mask layer. So you're going to select that mask layer in the layers panel. You're going to navigate to the top of your layers panel. You're going to click on that downward facing arrow on normal, which is your default blending mode. And then as I hover my cursor over the top of these options, then you can see how my photo is going to change. So by changing the blending mode of the clipping mask, we are essentially affecting the photo that's clipped to that mask layer. The first set of blending modes are darken blending modes. The second set are lighten blending modes. And the third set are contrast blending modes. And you can see, like I said, some of them are much better options than others. If you can also change the color of that mask. So if I go ahead and select that mask layer, we'll go ahead and turn off this photo, the visibility of the photo, so that we can see the mask. We can go to Edit, Fill, and you want to ensure that you have the Preserve Transparency box option checked here. If you accidentally forget to check that box, when you go ahead and click on the contents and the color to access your color picker, you can either randomly select a color by clicking in the box, you can change the hue by clicking in this bar down the side here, or you can sample a color from your page by clicking on your layout. So notice as I click around on my page, I'm able to create a new color. So I'm going to go with a blue. Let's go with a sort of a medium blue here. Click OK. Now, without that Preserve Transparency box checked, watch what happens. You can see that the whole layer is flooded with color, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to go to Edit, Undo, Fill, and let's repeat that this time by going to Edit, Fill, click on that Preserve Transparency box, and then click OK. And now you can see that we have essentially recolored our mask from black to blue. So what does this mean? This means that when we apply this blending mode to our mask, it doesn't essentially change the photo unless we start changing the blending mode of the photo as well. Mm-hmm. Now, if I just go ahead and step back and go to Edit, Fill, and let's convert that back to black and white. Now, if I have this blending mode applied to my photo, you can see that we really don't get any results because of the black is kind of showing through our image. So essentially the lesson here is always apply the blending mode to the mask unless you want to recolor the mask and play with blending modes on both the mask layer and the photo layer.
And Anna, am I correct in thinking if you're applying a color to the mask layer, it should be something that ideally complements the color palette of the wider piece?
That's the way I like to do it, but it's kind of fun to play around with different colors. So if I go to color and I access yellow, for example, click OK, and then we can now start playing around with the colors. You can see how it can introduce some really fun effects into your design. Yeah. So I wouldn't limit. I'm a great one for, don't obey the rules, think outside the box, and just play with the artistry and see what you can come up with. So I wouldn't necessarily limit yourself to the same colors. The other option here also is to keep that first photo on normal. Let's go ahead. So let's pick a better option here. So I quite like let's go with the linear burn. Go with the linear burn. So the other way to do this is to keep your photo on normal, and then you can duplicate your photo layers and you can start adding different blending modes to your photo layers. So we can lighten that photo by using one of the lighten blending modes. I like to use screen, and then we can duplicate those layers again, and then maybe add some contrast through soft light. And then you can additionally manipulate by using this opacity slider that's located at the top of your tools panel. So you can see how all the different ways, there are 3 different ways there that you can add blending modes to your digital elements or to your FotoBlendz clipping masks. So moving on to, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love the slow build up of layers. I always find that leads to a richer result with more depth.
Exactly.
So instead of just one layer with one blending mode, especially when you combine multiple ones, even if they have like 20% opacity, and so they very gradually layer it up, it just gives a richer overall result, I find.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And of course, you can add in different transfers into the mix too. You can add them over the top of your photo. You can apply blending modes to those transfers so that they're sort of used as an overlay so that you can kind of see through those transfers to your photo. So lots of different ways you can build that up.
Love it.
Okay. So the fifth way to artsify your scrapbooking is to use special effects. And so I have a series of products that I call FotoGlows. Let's go ahead and take a look at those. And these are essentially these light elements, and you can drag and drop them into your workspace. Let me go ahead and access number 7.
Ooh, I haven't seen these yet. These look awesome, Anna.
Yeah, they're kind of like flares, but I add in some stains, and sometimes I add in some glitter and some paint. And so when you start bringing them in, layering them up, and then again, adding those blending modes that we just looked at, you can get some really cool effects.
Did you have it when you were at school, like high school? Or actually, no, did you go to school in the UK?
Yeah, I did.
I know yeah. So did you have it where when you're really young, you get let into the art room? And this was my favorite time at school, where they had drawers and drawers full of art supplies. So you would open it and it would be like a glitter drawer, a cardboard drawer, a paper drawer. And that was heaven for me. That was so much fun.
Art class was my favorite.
That's what I'm thinking. But specifically like that kids art class, because I could play more. That wasn't like advanced life drawing that I did when I was a bit older and that kind of thing. So just playing with all the glue and glitter and paper and all that kind of stuff, that's the vibe that I'm getting here. So when you're showing off those flares, it just brought me back to that kids art class.
Well, this method that I've created with this drag and drop of these different artistry pieces to build up a page like this, I actually call it art play. So it's just, I call it the art play method.
It's a good name for it, I would say.
Yeah. So I'm dragging in this FotoGlow and I'm going to drop it onto my canvas. Now, I didn't have my cursor at the top of my layers panel here. And so what it means is it's dropped that FotoGlow in the middle of my clipping set. And this could potentially cause some of your layers to become unclipped. You can move that layer to the top, but see how here you can tell that this layer has become unclipped because we've lost that arrow. So you may have to reclip some layers. So it's always good practice when you're introducing new layers to click on the last layer of your layers stack in the layers panel. So with that move tool selected, I'm essentially going to just move this FotoGlow over the top of my image. And I kind of want it on the horizon here. And somehow I've managed to, let's bring this down so that we have more of the sky showing. So I want to place it so it looks like the sun is sort of coming up over the image. And so it's kind of nice to add a bit of creative license sometimes. What I feel like I'm doing when I'm creating a page personally is telling a story with my photos and my art. And so sometimes that means bringing in additional elements to elevate the photo and to visually tell that story. I kind of refer to this as visual storytelling. So once you have your FotoGlow in position, then you can start playing around with blending modes. And I typically like hard light or vivid light for these. But again, don't limit yourself. You can go ahead and try out all of the different options. I'm going to go with hard light. And then your options here are also to change the color. So some of these are white, some of them have more color to them. Go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and Photoshop Elements. That's Enhance, Adjust Color, Hue and Saturation. And then you're going to move the hue slider. And so notice how this now changes the look of that FotoGlow over the top of our design. You can also change the saturation. So you're going to pull more color out, or you're going to make it more pronounced. So that's a different option too. The other option that I like to use is Image Adjustment Levels. That's Enhance, Adjust Lighting Levels in Photoshop Elements. And you can bring in the sliders. This is the shadow slider. So you can bring that in to make more contrast or to include more shadows in your design, or you can bring in the highlight slider to bring in more highlights. And then here's your midtones. So again, just another way that you can manipulate that FotoGlow. And so notice how I've been able to bring a little kind of pink, yellow, or an orangey hue in, which is going to elevate this rock that's peeking out of my image.
I've just seen it as well. People are loving this in the comments, and keep the fantastic comments coming, guys. Rosa just said absolutely in-depth explanations. Wonderful work, Anna.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you're learning something. It's awesome. Makes me happy.
Yeah, I love how in-depth you go. With those recent adjustments, with the levels and so on, is it correct to say you could use adjustment layers as well for that with a clipping mask and so on? You
could absolutely use an adjustment layer.
Whichever one you want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I typically get a little bit overwhelmed with all the different clipped layers because I do a lot of clipping that I tend to just use levels, and because this is just digital art, guys, this is fun. It's not like I'm doing this for a client and there's a ton of work in it. It's so quick and easy to do these small adjustments that it's simpler for me to reintroduce that element if I decide I don't like it than it is to handle all of the adjustment layers in my layers panel. And I also like to teach without adjustment layers because I just think it's simpler for the beginner.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, actually, because I've got that layer overwhelm, and especially when you don't name them correctly and you end up with hundreds of different layers with ambiguous names, it gets super confusing. So
and this whole art play method is the whole kind of reason behind it is to allow you to create the artistry faster. So, if you can cut corners, I'm a big fan of the eraser tool. You're going to see me use it. For small jobs, if I'm not doing a complex masking of something, then I'll use the eraser tool because it's one step that I don't have to include in my process and it gets the artistry done faster.
Love it. And honestly, there's dozens of people in the comments right now showing the love for you, Anna. Just saying your classes are fantastic. So glad to see us working with you. Just tons of positive feedback. So you got a lot of fans out there. I love it. And I know a lot of the Design Cuts community as well are probably discovering you for the first time, but I'm seeing loads of great feedback from them as well.
Well, I love my customers as much as they love me. So it's a win-win situation. So
I hear you on that.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So at any time you can go in and you can change the blending mode. So if I wanted to change this back to multiply or maybe go to normal, I could go ahead and do that. You can go ahead and, kind of bring up these levels. So you can make adjustments as you go. So move things around. It's all very static, and you can go in and you can play with it as much as you want, so to speak. So this brings us on to the sixth way to artsify your scrapbooking, and this is Photoshop brushes. And I like to use brushes to support the color in my pages to enhance the theme. So we come back to that storytelling idea. And then also to instill texture. I'm a huge fan of texture. Essentially what we're doing in Photoshop is we're working in a very flat medium. So if you can bring as much texture as possible into your digital artistry or scrapbooking pages, this is going to help elevate them and create visual interest in your designs. So there are three categories of brushes by Anna Aspnes Designs. We have the pictorial style brushes, which support the theme of your scrapbooking layouts. And these can include, but are not limited to birds, architecture, trees, clouds, for example. And then I have a series of art brushes, which enable you to add color to your pages through the form of art strokes, artsy paint, and splatters, for example. And then I have tools such as tools that allow you to add texture. So these include things like digital stitching and textures such as the paper textures and tissue textures, which are going to create these fun dimensional elements in your design. So let me go ahead and show you the brush set. I'm going to go and navigate back to our brushes. And I put together this little brush set just for this class, which includes a variety of different brushes. We have a blending brush. So I have a series of FotoBlendz artsy blending brushes, which you can use for custom blending. You can also use them with the eraser tool to modify any of your brushes, and I'm going to show you how to do that. And then here's an example of one of the stains, example of the stitching, and then we've got a paper texture here, and then this is a pictorial style brush, which is obviously going to add a thematic component to your design. So my brushes are delivered in PNG and ABR format, and you'll notice that there are two different ABR files here. This is because through the evolution of Photoshop, there are different versions available to you. So essentially, up until Photoshop Elements 15 and Creative Cloud, you had a limit of 2,500 pixels in your brushes. And so there are lots of people still using those programs. And so I still provide my brushes in 2,500 pixels. And so this is this brush set here. The difference between this next one is you'll notice the suffix at the end, which is large. And these brushes are for the newer versions of Photoshop. So that's Photoshop Elements 15 and higher, as well as Photoshop CC. And these allow you to use brushes with the paintbrush tool 5,000 pixels and above. So
You've thought of everything, Anna. I love it.
Yeah. You can always use the PNG elements. If you're an earlier version user, then you can just drag these elements into your workspace. You can drag them in, and you can place them onto your layout. I'm going to just drag it on top here. So you can see how I've added this on the top here. And then you can just recolor it using that same edit fill option, just as we did previously, ensure that that preserve transparency box is checked. So that's what you can do if you still want to use the large size brush. Otherwise, if you want to use the brushes with the paintbrush tool, which is what I recommend, you're going to select the paintbrush tool from the tools panel. You're going to navigate to the top of your screen in Photoshop, or the bottom of your screen if you're working in Photoshop Elements, and you're going to click on your brush options. And if you click on the small wheel or the menu icon in Photoshop Elements, you can go down and you can go to import brushes. And then this is going to take you into your files. You're going to click around and navigate to your Photoshop brushes. And because I'm working in Photoshop CC, I'm going to double click on the large ABR file so that I have access to the larger brushes. And so now if I scroll down, you can see that these brushes have been introduced. In Photoshop, in the newer versions, you'll find your brushes in a folder. If I click on this small downward facing arrow, you'll see those brushes in the panel. If you're working in Elements, you won't have this folder, but you'll still see these images. And the number beneath these images tells you how big the brush is. So 2,647 pixels for this stain, and then 413 for this stitching. So back to how you can add brushes. You want to create a new layer for every single brush stroke that you add to your design. This means that if you change your mind about a brush stroke, then you can simply just edit that layer or delete that layer. If you've stamped multiple brushes on the same layer, then it's a lot more difficult to edit. So always try and get in the habit of creating a new layer for each brush stroke. And I want to add some of the blue color that's on this side of the page to create balance in my design. So this is where we're going to use the art tools or the art brushes to instill and enhance and support the color in my design. So I'm going to go ahead and select that stain brush, and I'm going to click on the foreground color at the bottom of the tools panel, click on my layout to sample a color, and then go ahead and click OK. Now, if I click this brush on the side of my layout and then try and move it, you can see that I've lost half of my brush. So typically what I like to do is to create a new layout, stamp my brush in the center of my page, and then go ahead and rotate, resize, and then move into position. This gives me more flexibility for being able to move that brush around my canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and place that there. Notice now how we've got this great balance happening. The blue starts on the right-hand side and continues, leads the eye to the left-hand side of the page. You can also reorder your layers at any time by clicking and dragging them down the layers panel. So for example, I can place that stain behind that transfer if I want to. We can support the theme of our page by adding a pictorial style brush. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to revisit my color picker, and I want a brown. So I can either select a brown that's in my layout, and if I'm struggling to do that, then I can manually select it by simply clicking around inside the color picker. I'm going to go with kind of a dark brown, click OK, go back to my paintbrush tool, navigate to my brush options, and this time I'm going to select this bird brush. Now I'm going to add that over the top of my design.
Oh, wow. They're so delicate.
Yeah. And then you can move them around. So I like to line up elements in my design. So notice how this paint curve comes around and we've got this great texture. So notice how I'm able to line that up and it creates this alignment in the design. And now you can go ahead and you can apply a blending mode if you want to. So you can come down and you can play around with the different options that are available here. So color burn is the best option, but I may need to just modify my photo slightly. So I'm going to select those photo layers by holding down the shift key and just bring this down just so I can see a bit more of those birds. If I wanted to keep this as multiply and I wanted to edit this brush, then I could use that FotoBlendz Artsy brush with the eraser tool. So before we selected the paintbrush tool, now I'm going to select the eraser tool, navigate back up to my brushes and select this FotoBlendz Artsy blending brush. You can resize the brush by bringing down the size. You can also rotate the brush if you want to from here. And you can go in and then just modify that brush if you wanted to. You can adjust the opacity at the top to smooth out any anomalies in your design. So just a quick way to edit those brushes without having to be involved with layer masks and brushes in that respect. It just kind of makes it easier. I would not recommend that you use the eraser tool for more complex blending and removal of elements from your designs. So that is that.
Really beautiful. I love how they kind of lead the eye around the top of the composition as well with that nice subtle arc.
Yeah, well, and this is the great thing about these created artsy backgrounds is that really the design work's done for you. You simply just have to add your photos and embellish and have fun with the brushes and the elements that I'm showing you how to use now. So it really makes the process super simple and easy, but yields these complex, sophisticated results for your photos.
Amazing.
Okay, so the last way is to add texture. I'm going to show you how to do that. For texture brushes, you're going to select the paintbrush tool and you're going to select the texture brush of your choosing. I like to go with a mid-gray for this purpose. So I'm going to select that as my foreground color. And then again, with that new layer selected, you're going to click on the background just like that. And then you can also, again, play around with blending modes. I typically like to add a multiply or a linear burn blending mode to these texture brushes. I find that it gives them a little bit more intensity and contrast in the design. And again, you can move them around, align them up, however you choose. So that is brushes. So we're moving now on to the 7th way to artsify your scrapbooking, and this is through embellishment. And this allows you to add a traditional component to your designs if you choose to. I also find that a couple of dimensional elements allows you to add visual interest through dimension and even more texture. So there's that texture again. You can also play with angles when moving your elements into position. So 2 different ways you can add elements. I'm going to navigate back to my ArtPlay palette. You can bring in some of the elements that are available to you from your ArtPlay palette and create your own element grouping. So for example, I can bring in this leaf element. I'm going to drag in the PSD file into the background of my design because we want to retain the layers. And then I'm going to select both of those layers in the layers panel and then drag them onto my canvas. And again, good idea if your cursor is at the top of your layers panel, rotate, resize. You can also recolor. So if I go to image, adjustments, hue and saturation, we can play around with the color of that and kind of just make it a little bit more fitting to our photo. You can change the saturation. Now let me go ahead and just zoom in here. So the reason why it's beneficial to have these cast shadows in PSD format and on different layers is that it allows you to manipulate the leaf shadow. So if I drag this leaf over this white area, you can see that the shadow is quite realistic. But if I drag it down on the bottom here, it gets a little bit too dark. So this is where it provides you the opportunity to change that. In Photoshop, you'll be working with the fill. If you're working in Photoshop Elements, you'll work with the opacity. But notice how I'm able to modify that. You can also recolor that shadow too. So typically the shadows are black or varying shades of gray. you can add a hue to that by changing them to blue, for example, or green as you choose. So I'm going to just drag this over this area of white space here. And again, with the alignment of the curve in the background here, place my leaf there. So for users that are not working in Photoshop, I provide these elements in individual PNG layers so that you can layer them up in the program of your choice. And then you can go ahead and you can add in all of these other layers. So I'm going to just bring in 2 that I've just randomly selected, drag them onto my design. And again, I'm placing them with that check mark. And then we can go ahead and position them. I'm going to add these elements in a cluster. So I like to do elements in sort of a trio effect. What we do is when we group elements together, it creates unity, it creates relationship, and it also creates organization in your design. So I'm just going to drag and reorder these. Typically, you want to have the flatter embellishments below the ones that have that protrude more off the page. And you can go ahead and change the size. And then you can see that these don't look as realistic. So we can add a realistic shadow by going to Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow in Photoshop. If you're working in Elements, that's Layer, Layer Style, Style Settings, Drop Shadow. And then this is going to bring up your layer style box. And I typically like to have my blending mode set to linear burn, the opacity really anywhere between 40 and 50. I like my angle to be set at 120. I like the light from my design to come in from the top left-hand corner. So I want my shadow to be down in the bottom right-hand corner.
I'm exactly the same. Yeah. And I don't know what it is. I've never met anyone who likes it to come from the top right.
There you go. This is why we get along, Tom. We align on the drop shadows.
Seriously, like I did this kind of work for probably 10 years and loved it. And everything you're showing me now makes me want to stop everything I'm doing professionally and just go and do this all day. It's so much fun.
So much fun.
It's all coming back to me.
I love it. So the elements, and so then we move on to the distance. So the distance and the size are really going to be dependent on the element. So we have a fairly flat label here. And so the drop shadow on that does not have to be as large as perhaps on the button or on the leaf. So I'm going to bring this down maybe to about 3 or 2. And notice how the size dictates how far out the shadow comes, and the size kind of softens it and makes it more realistic. So typically I'll use my keyboard for this and I'll just enter values of about 2. I quite like 2 for these word labels. And then you're going to go ahead and click OK, and then you're going to access that button and you're going to repeat that action and re-access that drop shadow layer style. And then this time I'm going to bring up that shadow. Notice how I can increase the distance and the size. You can also change the opacity to make that more dimensional. And then I'm going to finish this off by creating a new layer, returning to my brushes, because we have that nice little stitching element there, which is going to basically tie the whole thing together. So you can make your own element clusters, and notice how this creates a visual triangle. So we have an element cluster here, we have the birds at the top here, and then we have this element here, and it sort of creates a frame around our photo, therefore drawing the eye into our image, which is where we want the person that's viewing our page to look. The other way that you can add elements using Anna Aspnes designs is to use these multimedia elements. And this is a sort of an older version of the multimedia elements. Typically these days, following customer feedback and requests, I now include the PNG files individually. So every single layer that creates this PNG file is included separately, just like I include in the ArtPy palettes. But I like to use the PSD file because I'm working in Photoshop and it just makes sense to do that. So I'm going to open this up and notice we have all of these different layers. So you can use, again, turn off the visibility. You can change the color of those layers independently. You can change the size, the rotation. You can manipulate them. You can use the eraser on any portion of this and remove areas. But I'm just going to select this image or all of these layers ensure that auto select option is unchecked, and then drag this onto my canvas. And so this is just a pre-made element cluster that you can use to embellish your design. So you don't have to create your own clusters essentially. And so I wouldn't necessarily keep both those elements, but I wanted to just demonstrate that to you so that you could see how those work and how that they can simplify your process. So that brings us to the 8th and final way to artsify your scrapbooking. And if you're a scrapbooker, you like to add context to your design sometimes. And so this can include a title. Sometimes you want to tell a bit of the story through quotes or lyrics or even your own stories. So to do this, I have a series of products called WordART, and these are delivered in a variety of different formats. So in particular, the WordART mix is the way I've sort of landed. I've gone through quite a few reiterations of this. I've been doing this for 17 years. So over the years, feedback and trends and just how the Photoshop has evolved has allowed me to offer my products in different ways. So I have the beaded threads here, which is also delivered in that PSD format so that you can access those beads individually as well as the stitching. And then we have these WordART elements, which of course can be recolored or used with the paintbrush tool because these are included in the ABR file.
It's so helpful having those different formats, honestly, because everyone's got their own preference. Some people like PNG, some like the brushes.
Yeah, everybody likes to do things different way. And just because something, it's a bit like me with adjustment layers, just because, you know, do you. I'm always one of those people, basically, try everything, figure out what you like, and then incorporate those bits that work for you into your process, because that's what's going to make you happy. Because if it's not fun, you're not going to do it, you know? Yep. And the whole point of this is to have fun. Precisely. So I have these like word transfers, which are sort of vintage blended elements. And then I have these elements, these dimensional elements. So what I like to do is I like to take a selection of these. So I'm going to select this beaded threads, one of these. We'll do one of these transfers, and then we'll go ahead and bring in one of these wood words. I'm holding down that Control or Command key in order to select those, and then I'm dragging them in and placing them directly onto my canvas. And again, same process, we're just going to accept the transformation in order to place those layers on our canvas. And then it's just a matter of dragging them and moving them over. So notice how that transfer blends really nicely into the background without me having to do anything at all. You can, of course, go ahead and apply blending modes if you want to. See if there's a way that you can incorporate those. Sometimes you get some really neat effects by doing that. And then you also want to reorder those layers. So let's go ahead and bring this one across. And then we can maybe bring this one down here over the top of the leaf. And then we can bring this element over here. And notice it's behind that transfer, and we typically want our more dimensional elements to be on top. So I'm going to drag that up to the top of the layer stack. And again, we're creating this cluster of words, which is also placed near our cluster of elements. Again, creating that relationship and keeping the integrity of this visual triangle that's drawing our eye into the focal point of our page. So you can go ahead and move these pieces around. It's a bit like moving pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. You know, you've got to make them fit. And see, this is where having the auto select can kind of be a little bit problematic, because you can pick up pieces that you don't necessarily want to move. And then I'm going to complete this just by adding another drop shadow layer style. Oops.
Love it.
Like this. And this is going to make it pop off the page. See how that works? We maybe want to bring the distance down slightly, maybe change the opacity, make it a bit stronger, and then click OK. And then the final way to add words to your page is to use the text box. And so to do this, you're going to select the text tool from the tools panel. You're going to click down with that left mouse button, drag, and release. And then this is going to automatically paste some sort of lorem ipsum, I call it nonsense text, into that text box. And then this is going to allow you simply to go ahead and type. So you can type, or you can copy and paste your favorite quote into that text box. You can go up to the options at the top of your screen, and you can change the font that you want to use on your page. You can also change the size. I typically like 12-point text for my text boxes. You don't want to go too small because you can't read it, but you also don't want to go too big. And then you're going to just place it on your page along with the rest of your design. And so there you go. That's 8 different ways to artsify your scrapbooking using the different product ranges by Anna Aspnes Designs.
Wow. So normally I'm in a private bit. Normally I've got the team around me and we do a group round of applause, but as it's just me, I'm gonna do a solo one. Could everyone leave a quick comment in the chat what they thought? Like for me, that was like 8 classes packed into one. Janice just said, fantastic class, thank you. One of the best live classes I've ever seen, Anna, and I had high expectations because obviously I've gotten to know you quite well and I know the quality of your work, but that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing so openly.
It's my pleasure. Techniques. It's my pleasure. I tend to over deliver.
Yes. and you know we're the same way. So honestly, I thought we were the most meticulous people when it came to multiple file formats and thinking of every tiny thing. I think you're very, very similar in that respect. And I love that.
And I listen to feedback. I listen to my customers, and if they, they want something and they ask for it, then 9 times out of 10, I'll make it happen.
Yeah, so, that's awesome. Yeah, same here. Would you like to stop sharing your screen just so you can see all the lovely comments come in? Because your ego is about to get the biggest massage in the world. They're flying in. You might need to scroll quite a lot to see everyone. But honestly, guys, thank you for being so incredibly vocal and supportive and for being here with us today. Yeah,
there's lots of places you could be right now, and I'm so grateful that you're here with us.
Absolutely. Look at how, it is. That was fun. Look how awesome all of these people are in the chat. We love you guys.
Yeah.
This is really cool. Wow. Okay. My mind is like swimming. Like I say, I just, I'm meant to be going out with a group of us tonight. I just want to go home and art play now.
Right? Yeah. It's good stuff. Yeah. I get super excited. It never gets old. Like I said, I've been doing this for 17 years. I've probably been teaching for the last, 5, 6, my customers will tell me how long I've been teaching for, but a fair number of years now, and it just never gets old. It never gets old. Sharing this stuff.
I love to teach as well, but normally when I'm hosting these things and we have a teacher such as yourself on, it can take a little bit of direction or back and forth. I've never been so quiet on one of these. I was just sat here quite quietly taking notes and being like, that's amazing.
You couldn't get away from Edgeface, could you?
It's so good though, honestly. So I've got a glass of water. Have you got anything on board?
I do. I have I'm always prepared with a glass of water because I never know when I'm going to lose my voice.
I know it's bad luck with water, but cheers. Here's to a lesson well done, and to the opening of your wonderful new store at Design. So I thought we might take 5 minutes just to share that and show that off to people, because I'm so proud of what you put together for us. So guys, just while Anna opens up her screen again, you may have been on Julie's live class before this, but if you were not, we were talking about the fact this is our official digital scrapbooking event. This whole week, we're going to be doing all kinds of cool stuff. We've got more live classes tomorrow. We've got freebies, we've got giveaways, we've got all kinds of amazing stuff. And this is all to celebrate the launch of our first ever official digital scrapbooking section, which I know, Anna, you're excited about. We've been talking about this for months now, haven't we?
I was going to say, I've been keeping this quiet for the best part of this year, I think. So it's one of those things that's like, wow, it's really here already.
Yes, I know.
It's taken so long, but it's gone by so quickly as well, So,
it has. Actually, Anna, how are you on time?
I'm excellent.
I know Are you? Okay, because
Yeah.
Krista just raised a very good point. So as much as I want to make the big announcement about your store in the new section, she just said, what about the questions?
Yes.
So are you okay if we do some quick fire?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't want to neglect anyone. So I can see Carla, who says that she's Anna's neighbor. She's your neighbor.
Oh, she is?
From Avado.
Oh, funny. Yeah. Okay. Avada. I was like thinking she lives next, because I do have.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
My neighbor next door, I met, through scrapbooking, and she literally lives next door to me. So it's funny. But cool. Yeah, Avada's close. I have family in Avada, or at least my husband does. So,
nice. I can see as well, Matty asked, does your items have commercial license? I was going to announce that when we showed off Anna's store, but the beauty of Design Cuts is we have one license. It's an extended commercial license, and it's for no extra cost. So virtually every other marketplace out there, you have to pay extra to get the commercial license. With us, it's all wrapped in. So it's super simple, super cost effective, and people tend to kind of go quite nuts over it, to be honest. It's a real popular point of our marketplace. Maria says, will all the scrapbooking products be available for Procreate as well? Not to my knowledge. How about you, Anna? Any plans?
I haven't looked into Procreate, but I know it's something that potentially I may move into at this point. At this point, if I get enough people wanting it, then it's something that I will certainly move into and start looking at to provide. At the moment, I'm not doing Procreate, but it's on my radar.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Maybe that's a wider chat for us, but to fuse those, because already we're seeing a lot of love for the scrapbooking section. I think that's going to be really popular. Our Procreate section people love as well. So maybe there's some scrapbooking Procreate goodness that could happen. Yeah,
for sure. I think so. I do know a lot of my customers are starting to design pages on their iPads using.
Yeah. Really popular, isn't it? So Abby, thank you for the kind words. Says DC definitely has the best license structure. We appreciate that.
There are a few caveats though to the scrapbooking structure, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. So yes, please do go and read the license page. As with any license, including commercial licenses, this is not a free-for-all. Obviously, you can't get Anna's packs and start reselling them directly and that kind of thing. So definitely go and have a read. But I will say it's one of the most clear and generous licenses out there. So people do enjoy it.
I agree.
And thank you for your help on that front as well, Anna, with the scrapbooking section. So is there a link for the supplies you're using here today in the class? This one's kind of more on me, to be honest, isn't it, Anna? So we're used to not having, I'll put my hands up. We're used to not having freebies associated with these because it gets messy with people going back and forward and downloading them. Anna, I think you originally wanted to offer some freebies. Is that correct?
I did. It's up to you what you want to do.
Am I able to perhaps eat my words previously? Because we saw them be quite requested in the other live class. If we arrange that with you after this, what we could do is we could update the page where you registered for this class. We could update and put a link in there within the next 24 hours, and then people could benefit from that.
I think it'd be great.
Okay? Perfect. So I know Raluca on our team is watching. Raluca, if you're able to help coordinate that with Anna, that would be wonderful, please. But we, of course, Anna's been super generous, so we would love to give you guys that freebie. And I think that would work really well. So as well, Matty says again, I have a general question. Are those elements good for designing paper pads? I use graphic elements for designing my paper pads, and I'm not sure what is exactly the difference. What am I missing? Do you understand the question, Anna? I was maybe slightly lost.
I'm assuming what he's saying is that can he use the designs to create printed paper pads? Which
I believe so. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking he's saying. You can clarify if you can clarify if we've got that right. But as far as I'm concerned, that's okay under the license.
Mm-hmm.
As I know.
Okay. Awesome. And yeah, it is absolutely. So Joanne says, when you used your texture brush, you selected a mid-gray color. Was that because of the colors in this piece, or do you generally use gray for adding textures with the brush?
Yeah, I like grays for the tapes and the tissues, and pretty much all of them. I like to add them in gray. It just seems to work pretty well for me. Sometimes it will have maybe a slight brown hue if I want more of a warmer color. Sometimes maybe a more of a blue or a green hue if I want cooler colors. But typically it's gray. And I like to start with mid-gray. You can always go back. If you go to the image adjustments levels, then you can increase that, the contrast of that gray to suit your design, basically. So it's not set in stone. Once you've added the color and the brush in that color, you can then go and manipulate it either using the hue and saturation or using the levels controls in Photoshop or Elements.
Incredible. Perfect. Well, Anna, are you happy to, and I can see people loving the freebies. So Anna, you were totally right. We're going to hook those up with you.
Yes, okay.
So
I get great delight in it.
Yeah. Would you mind resharing your screen and maybe going on your store, and I can talk people through what's happening there?
Okay. So I'm sharing my screen.
Perfect. So while Anna opens that up, I'm going to give you guys a bit of context, because why we have teamed up with Anna and several other very well-respected and wonderful people in the scrapbooking space is because we know, like, we love scrapbooking ourselves. We love digital scrapbooking. And we know there are so many scrapbookers in our community, and we felt like we weren't serving them as well as we could be. And I think it's up to something like 26% of our audience are actually interested in scrapbooking. So it was crazy to me that we didn't have a complete section for it. So we thought, why not do that? And as always, the way we work is it's quality over quantity. So we didn't want to have thousands and thousands of every product under the sun. We teamed up specifically with people like Anna, who we regarded as the best people in the scrapbooking space. Oh, just checking, you can hear me, Anna?
I can hear you. I'm listening.
Oh, perfect. Okay, it's all right. The screen froze earlier and you were so still. I was like, oh no, not again. Yes, as I say, we teamed up with some of the absolute biggest and best people in the scrapbooking space. And not only that, but we got their absolute most popular, most awesome products and opened up a shiny new store for them. So if you go to our top menu and hover over graphics, then the top item in the graphics drop down is scrapbooking. You can see, and so if we go there, you can see all of the wonderful scrapbooking resources from all the different people. But of course, if you click on one of Anna's products, you can see her name just below. So there we go, like the arty transfer, for example.
Yeah.
And if you click on Anna's shop name, that takes you through to her shop. Also, if you look at the bottom of this video, you will see a shiny, glinty kind of green button that says check out Anna's store. And you can see she's got pages and pages and pages of these incredible resources. It's all the kind of stuff that you saw today. So it is all of this kind of ephemera, all of these overlays, all of these wonderful templates that you can use for collaging and brushes. What other kind of stuff have we got in there, Anna? There's loads.
Yeah, there's these template albums, which are really neat. So if I click on this, you can see that we have, scroll down. So here's the FotoBlendz that I was referring to earlier, and then you've got the frames. So this will create a 20-page photo album. So all you have to do is go in, clip your photos to these different photo mask layers, and then you can add in the digital art supplies around. So you can actually use them without any digital art supplies and just go print your album, or you can go ahead and add in any of those art play elements or multimedia. They include some stitching, and usually there's a title involved, but you might want to customize your titles. So the templates are super popular because they're a quick and easy way to create a page. And then there's different types of frames here. I've got these urban threads frames, which have these stain sort of clipping masks in them. So when you clip your photo to that frame, the stain comes through your photo, and it's got this neat stitching. And some more kind of dimensional frames here. So this is a great way to add additional photos. So that layout that I just created, if I wanted to add more photos from that particular hiking trip, I could do that by adding in these frames. It's a great way to incorporate more photos into a page. And then
I love how affordable these packs are. I mean, so many of these are around the $5 mark, which is crazy. I mean, normally, even our most affordable products are not quite that cheap. So for me, it's an absolute bargain.
Yeah, so brushes. So here's some canvas textures. So here's what I was talking about. You can add this really cool canvas texture to your design. So that's really neat. Again, I would stamp those in gray and add like a linear burn or a multiply blending mode. There's some camera brushes here, these sort of multimedia elements with art strokes and stitching and splatters. And again, those FotoGlows are incorporated in there. So you kind of get more bang for your buck with these sort of multimedia elements. I do a lot of these sort of architectural style brushes. I have a lot of customers who are photo artists or don't even like to use photos at all.
Oh, wow, they're beautiful, actually.
Yeah, so that they can use these brushes in place of a photo.
Where were you when I was doing restaurant menus for Italian restaurants, Anna?
I know, right?
This is what I needed.
Yeah, so, you know, those are super popular. And then, of course, we've had the artsy templates. So these are delivered. This is just a single template, but these are pretty neat. And I started actually including the transfers in there. So essentially, these are layered files. So you can move all of these layers around independently. You can add the background paper of your choice, add in your photos. You could add a clipping mask or a FotoBlendz clipping mask here. Custom blend a photo into the background if you want to. You just type in the text box, which is ready-made for you, and then change out the title. So just a super easy kind of a blueprint approach to creating a page. So I included my most popular designs, particularly in the store. These are some painted multimedia elements, which are really cool. I actually did a class on this too, on how to create.
Oh, wow. They're stunning.
Yeah, but I use paint and stains to create these. And again, these are delivered in PSD format, so you can use the layers independently, and you can even mix and match the layers from the different elements to create your own multimedia flowers, which is pretty cool if you want to get super creative.
I love it. Anna, just welcome, basically. Welcome to the new section. I am thrilled to have you. I think you're going to be definitely one of our most popular artists in there. I can see it already.
I'm thrilled to be here and just to share this stuff. It's been lighting up my world for the last 17 years. So the more I can share it with others, the better. And generally the people that kind of follow me are pretty awesome people. So
they are. Yeah, it's so nice to meet so many of you. I know we've got a real mix of some of Anna's community here and a lot of the Design Cuts community. I can see Kay says, I love Design Cuts before. Now I really love you guys. So thank you for being so wonderful today, everyone. And remember, if you click on the green button below this video, I highly recommend going and browsing and shopping around Anna's store. There is so much good stuff in there. It's so inspiring. And of course, you get that commercial license included, and you get rewarded for scooping up as many as you can, because of course, the more you buy, the more you save, which is a fantastic feature and well worth taking advantage of. And of course, if you get stuck, we've got our customer care team, which are world renowned for being the loveliest people on earth. So if you get stuck at all, you can always reach out. We will send you hands-on videos, help walk you through everything, and just make it a really, really pleasant experience for you guys. So never be afraid to reach out. We're absolutely here for you guys. I thought we had frozen again there, Anna. Yeah. Anna, thank you for being so fantastic. You've shared so much of your time and wisdom and techniques and experience today. Honestly, my mind's blown, and the positivity has just been overwhelming in the chat. So thank you.
That makes me happy. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure to come and connect with the people over here and just open my art up to more creatives, really.
I love your passion for teaching, and for the people who are asking about replays. Yes, if you go to our Learn section, you will find the replay for this entire chat, so you can watch it back to your heart's content. But Anna, thank you again, and I guess I'll talk to you pretty soon. I think we've got a call next week or something, possibly.
Yeah, we'll chat soon for sure. So
cool. Can't wait to hang out.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys,
thank you for coming and supporting me in this. I think this is the largest class I've ever taught, and so definitely a few nerves there, but it was great to share.
Oh, don't be nervous. Shake it all off now. It's all good. No, yeah. you did great, and everyone's been so positive and so wonderful. I know when we close these, we get the stats, like how many comments were left. I think it's going to be into the thousands at this rate. You guys have been so vocal and so chatty. So
it's been wonderful.
Thank you for being here. Thank you again, Anna. And keep your eyes peeled, because there's going to be big, amazing things happening with this new scrapbooking section. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
All right. We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.